What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Steiner here with another episode of Secondhand Talent, where we shine the spotlight on the people who shine the spotlights. In other words, we talk to the rest of the villagers in the village it takes to make live music. And today we have with us an incredible guest. We have Terra Lopez, the community manager for Backline. Backline is an incredible organization, which we're going to talk a whole lot about. But first, Terra, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. And real quick, before I ask our regular first question, I just want to give a quick thanks to Tenacious Toys for sponsoring our lovely desk candy. We have this custom. By the time this episode airs, this will have been given away, a custom Crush the Can customized by Steener herself. And thank you, Luke Chu, for providing our lo-fi. And now on to our question. When we had first gotten in touch, it was a bit of a roundabout sort of way. Shout out to the Heady Wax Fiends community for making the connection. Thanks, Matt. The first time I reached out to you and said, "Hey, I have a podcast called Secondhand Talent, and I think Backline would be a great fit." I'm curious to know what was your, us not really knowing each other before then. What was the first thing that you thought of when you heard the name Secondhand Talent?
I was intrigued, to be honest. It's a really interesting and unique podcast title, and it kind of just drew me in immediately because of the work that we do here at Backline. We also take care of the individuals behind the scenes for a lot of the work that we do. So I would say I was intrigued to kind of find out, like, all right, what is this guy about? What is this podcast all about?
A lot of people have that, kind of are getting that association, the secondhand behind the scenes, talent. And one of the things that I've really tried to stress with these interviews and with the guests that I have on the show is that playing an instrument is not a barrier for entry to being in live music. If you
Mm.
love live music, there is a place for you. Like, it's a community that, will open its arms and embrace you. You just have to want to be a part of it. And one of the reasons I'm so grateful that you're joining us on the show is it's turned into a pretty big village that we've got here of live music.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. I'm an artist and touring musician myself. I've been on the road for 15 plus years, and so it's wild how large this village can be, but also how small in terms of I feel like everyone knows everyone in a way. There's definitely that 6 degree of separation when it comes to folks in the live music industry background. And so it does feel like a family in a lot of ways because everyone knows someone. And like you said, there is a role for everyone. And it's been really cool getting to kind of, as an artist and as a front person of musical projects, and while also now working with Backline, it's been really cool to meet and to kind of just see how other roles work.
So I definitely want to get into, your musical journey and what ultimately got you involved in Backline. But first, for our viewers and listeners, why don't you give us a bit of insight into what Backline is?
Backline is an organization that provides free mental health and wellness resources to the music industry and their family members. And that includes everyone in the industry, right? Like folks that we're talking about here, not only artists, but managers, tour crew, venue staff, security, promoters, security guards at these music venues, and their family members. So,
Mm.
really, we want to make sure that everyone in the industry has the support that we believe they need, or if they do need it, they should have access to that. And so we've been an organization for 5.5 years, going on 6 now, and it's been really incredible to see the growth within just over the last. I've been community manager at Backline for about 3.5 years now, and it's just been beautiful to watch the industry kind of shift the conversation on mental health. I feel like mental health just in general is and still is, there's still some room, absolutely, for growth, but you just didn't have these conversations even just 5 years ago, you know?
Absolutely.
Um, if you were on the road, you were on the road and you didn't complain about it, or you were told not to, and mental health was just kind of this, um, figment of someone's imagination, and I feel like, um, we're starting to see that barrier be broken. We're starting to see folks kind of, like, move away from the stigma and realize like, oh, this is a really tough industry and I need help. And so Backline provides that help and it's free. Our bread and butter is our case management program where folks can come to us, tell us where they live, what they're looking for, whether that's, I need a therapist who specializes in depression, or I'm looking for a life coach because I feel really stuck right now. And here's what I can afford, or I can't afford anything. We don't turn anyone away. And we are basically the bridge to help folks find the help they, get the help that they need. So we do that. We also have a weekly support group called the Green Room. It's every Tuesday at 11:15 Pacific. And it's really just a space for folks to come together and vent or share or just listen. It's held by a mental health professional. So if you need, some guidance, we got you. And then we also have a ton of free wellness resources. So, say therapy might not be something you're interested in, but you've always wanted to try out yoga or meditation, or nutrition. You're trying to figure out, how do I stay healthy on the road? We have free subscriptions to apps, curated content, videos, for folks to engage with as well. So whether you're looking for a therapist or a wellness modality, like, you can go to backline.care and you can find the help you need, and we got you.
And folks, you better believe that that link will be in the description in the comments. And we were talking a little bit before the interview about how, this is something that I really haven't seen anything quite like in the industry, especially, you know, talking about extending it not just to the folks who are involved, but their families as well. I mean, we got our firsthand talent, secondhand talent, and third-hand talent, all covered in this. And it's so interesting to me, because as you were talking, I kind of was thinking a little bit about the dichotomy of how it's split, about how we look at how our artists, our heroes, artists, how they take care of themselves, yet we don't often translate that down to self-care and
Mhm.
making sure that we're okay. And I remember uh, when I first, and I'm dating myself here, when I first heard of Fish, they were not together. And I do remember, hearing about the strategy that, after each show, they each have their own bus, and to not talk about the show during the show, and not to give each other notes during set break, and how they would put all of these kind of wellness practices into place. And then I remember being on the road a couple of years later in a road manager capacity, and there was like, it was just chaos. And it's fascinating to kind of think of that, being my first Fish experience. Trey recently opening, or starting the Divided Sky Foundation, and having that there for recovery, which is incredible. But some of the things that you talked about, the alternative methods, there's nothing out there that comes even close to covering that spectrum, let alone providing those services on a non-turned down basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so important to us that we don't turn anyone away. While we're not necessarily a crisis organization, we pride ourselves in acting fast and getting the help that you need. You know, by the time that you reach out to us, you will be assigned a case manager within 48 hours. And from there, you have a 30-minute call with your own case manager and you can tell them what you need help with. And again, we have over 1,200 providers in our clinical network, and that's growing every single week. And so we're represented in every state, we're represented in various specializations. So if you're looking for, you know, someone that understands addiction, we can find someone for you within your city, or someone that understands anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, whatever it is. We're able to help you narrow that down and give you some options. And something that I think is pretty incredible is that everyone in our network is vetted. You don't
Mm,
have to worry about that. Our case managers vet every single professional that is in our network, and they also have experience in the music industry. And I think that's a big thing, is not having to explain. I can't tell you how many therapy sessions I've had in the past where I had to explain what I did for a living, or I had to explain, like, I'm sorry, I'm not able to get that much sleep on the road or drink as much water as I need to. That's just not the reality of touring sometimes. And you don't have to do that here. The professionals have experience in the industry. They've either come directly from the industry themselves, or they have family members, or they've, you know, trained. We also train folks in various workshops and whatnot. So I think it's a really special process because you don't have to explain what you do. You don't have to feel
yeah.
judged for what you do, or for the, or, you know, how the lifestyle is. Like, they get it already.
I think that's so, it didn't even occur to me that that should be a part of the process, and as you've been saying it, I've been thinking, "Oh my god, it's so true." Having been in the industry as long as I have as well, the amount of therapy I've been in, trust me, I've had plenty of it, and, to have to iterate over and over again the different aspects of what touring life is like, what performing life is like, what, as a comedian, what open mic life is like, and gigging 5 or 6 nights a week, it's exhausting in and of itself.
Mm,
And to be able to source people who have intimate knowledge of the industry, it didn't even occur to me how important that gives the name Backline to me a whole new meaning, because that really is a backline in the sense that you have a roster of people who can not just reinforce but validate the
mm.
experiences that the people who seek out your help are going through, and say, hey, yeah, I've been there, or I know someone who's been there, or I come from that space, and I understand exactly what you're saying to me. Like, I never even occurred to me how massive and important that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, unless you've been on the road, unless you have been either yourself or your partner or a family member and you've seen it firsthand, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what touring even looks like, or what that is, or what the music industry is, and how it all plays out. And I think it's so important to have someone in your corner who understands the realities and how difficult it can be, and the unique struggles and challenges, and also the triumphs of what it all can look like and be like. I think just feeling heard and seen in that kind of way is huge. And so, and we know that, you know, a lot of us come at Backline, we all have some type of musical background. And so that's also very helpful in kind of knowing just how, who our community is, because we're a part of that community.
Yeah, and I think that, kind of in the same way that it helps that I'm not an industry outsider, interviewing all of these people in all of these really hyper specific roles in the live music industry. It helps that I've been there and that I've done that and that I kind of know, what questions to ask and why I'm asking them. It really does add, and again, not this is really making me think about myself and my own praxis in a different light, but it really does matter to be able to relate on that immediate level. You mentioned earlier that you've spent some time touring on the road as well, and I'm curious, first, what was your experience like getting into live music, and then what led you to Backline?
So I'm a singer and I've been in various projects over the last 15 years, anything from electronic, which I now front a project called Rituals of Mine, and I have for quite some years, but also singing with Alice in Chains, and just kind of like doing that whole thing. That was a wild experience. But like, I got into music probably around 20 years ago. I'm dating myself. But really just gigging around town, and it quickly built some momentum, and then I started touring nationally and internationally, and um, it was difficult at times, so many times. We did a 45-day long tour with very little money and very little resources in a van with five people. And talk about mental health and how that affects your mental health, sleeping on strangers' floors, literally. Um, and doing that every day for 45 days really, really can affect your mental health and your emotional health. And it did. And at the time, you just didn't talk about it. You just went, right? You were a warrior. That's what we'd call ourselves. You're a road warrior.
Weekend warriors.
You're just going to continue. You have to, because if you miss a show, well, that's dinner right there. That's gas right there. Like, you're not going to be able to continue the tour. So you go, it's onward. And um I did that for many, many, many years, and I love touring. I will still tour, but it definitely affected my mental health and just financial stability. um I've always been very passionate about mental health, but it was around 8 years ago, I lost my dad to suicide. And that really forced me to to stop completely and really look at my own mental health and what I'm doing and how I can help my family and help myself and help my community. And so it was then and there that I started really looking into becoming a mental health advocate. And around 3.5 years ago, I came across Backline, loved the work that they were doing, and they just so happened to be hiring. And I reached out and was just so lucky to be able to be the community manager. I'm so grateful to be in this role for 3.5 years now, supporting those in my community and letting them know, like, hey, like, we exist, you don't have to suffer alone. So it's been a journey. But I love that I have the background of being an artist, because I, like you were saying with your podcast, like, how to talk to people. What your community of folks need. And it's truly a dream every day to be able to do this work and to be able to be a voice for maybe some folks who just their voices aren't heard. And so it's the most fulfilling work I've done.
Well, this is one of those things where I don't think it's ever too late. My condolences, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And I think it's incredible that you took that energy and momentum to seek out some way to make a positive change for others who maybe were going through similar but different things to you, having had the body of experience that you had already lived. um, to it's just I think at that point a fortuitous sequence of events where that you kind of trip and fall and find Backline and they're hiring, and I think it's really you know just an incredible thing that Backline found you, that you
Mhm.
found Backline, and that like you said, you've been there over 3 years strong now. Uh, Talk to me a little bit about what it means to be a community manager.
It is truly a dream. I basically, on a day-to-day basis, speak with artists, labels, brands, and tour crew members. I speak to the community, to the Backline community. And I'm kind of the voice for Backline on socials, on websites, on basically any front-facing um,
On Secondhand
direction.
Talent. There
There
you
you
go.
go. Yes. Kind of spreading the gospel of Backline, and also trying to understand like what the community needs and how Backline can meet that need. And so it's a lot of conversations just like this of spreading awareness, of speaking to individuals who need our support, and going online, spending a lot of time online trying to figure out ways that we can just spread the word, and get Backline in front of those that need it most. So every day it's something different.
And I think that's a really great point, which, hopping right off of what you just said there, getting in front of as many people as possible, because, anybody who's dealt with grief, loss, addiction, any of those things, we can't confront people with those things. We need to provide an outlet for them to feel safe coming to us. It never works if with confrontation and with saying, "Hey, you know, there's an issue." No, what needs to happen is, as you were saying, awareness needs to be raised so that folks know that they do have this outlet. And I for one, we're gonna be putting the logo and a link to the website on the Secondhand Talent homepage, folks. You could check it out on secondhandtalent.com anytime you'd like. I think that letting people know that those resources are there is so, so, so important, because it's not only is it tough to seek out, and as oneself, to bring yourself to that point.
Absolutely. A lot of the feedback that I get from artists is, I haven't even used y'all yet, but just knowing that you're there, just knowing that you're there is it feels like a safety net,
Yes.
which I do agree. I think, our hope is just spreading awareness and letting folks know that we exist, so that when someone's ready, or they could come to us, or if they have a friend or a family member or a bandmate in struggling, they know, oh yeah, hey, check out Backline. And I think that's the biggest goal for us, is just letting folks know we exist, and meeting them where they're at is so important, because like you said, folks will seek out the help when they're ready, and we know that from experience. And so it really is just, whether it's putting up venue signage in a green room, letting folks know while they're sitting around before their show, like, oh, that's cool, I'm going to take a picture of this, and I might not actually reach out now, but I'll have it on my phone in case I'm really struggling on the road, or I really need to talk to someone. It's there.
Yeah, I mean, and again, the name of the organization really coming into play there. I mean, Backline, almost like a lifeline, but Backline is a better industry term. Uh, but I wanted to ask you, having been with the organization for over 3 years, what would you say are some of your finest achievements or finest moments, or some things that you look back on and say, like, hey, like, I'm so grateful that I was a part of this, or I can't
Mm.
believe I did that, or anything like that? What are some highlights?
This year alone has been a highlight, and I know it's early on, but it's been incredible in the 5.5 years that the organization has been around. This is absolutely our biggest moment, our largest growth. We're seeing so much support from huge international pop stars to huge agencies to corporations and to fans. Like we're seeing this overall support has just been immense, whether it's financially or whether it's online and social engagement. But with that, we're also seeing such an increased need because, right, the more people that see that we exist, the more people will come and need that support. So it's a balance, but this year I would say has just been a huge accomplishment for the team. I think we've been an organization for 5.5 years planting these seeds, and we're starting to finally see like it all coming to fruition. And I would say that has been just incredible, whether it's, how the team has really been able to be there for the folks in LA who lost their homes, their lives, their livelihood, um, to working with huge stars like Chappell Roan and Charlie XCX and Noah Khan and raising awareness there specifically for artists and their crew to honestly, I host these monthly real talk Instagram lives with artists and just seeing that grow and just seeing like artists coming forward, being more open to having the conversation about mental health and about the realities on the road and what that looks like have been huge highlights for me personally, specifically as a community manager and just kind of seeing like, okay, the work that we've all put in and I've personally put in for the last 3.5 years is now starting to really manifest this year.
And just so folks understand, at the time of this taping, it's March. This episode isn't going to air till later in the year, but we're not going to wait until then to put the link on our website. We're starting this right away. This is the first interview that we're going to announce for the season because it matters that it's out there. And I did notice as I was doing my research, and I did hear about her speech regarding Chappell Roan's input, and I think that, her taking that space to to say those words and put that out there, and then watching the industry react, something you said really struck a chord in me. The demand has always been there. And what, I guess what 2025 is turning into for Backline is finally other people outside the industry are realizing, you know, we don't know the scope and the depth of this issue because it's never been investigated. But it makes total sense to me that folks would be coming and lining up out of the woodwork for your services because one of the goals of Secondhand Talent as a show is to highlight not just the guests we have on the show, but all of the people who work in the spaces that they occupy, all of the front of house guys, stage managers, engineers, bouncers, bartenders, accountants, beginning to end, everybody involved. For every one or two that we interview on the show, there's hundreds more. And, you know, it kind of sounds to me anyway, as at the time of this recording, that this is going to be a kind of a watershed year for Backline. And it is great to see people like Chappell Roan, who are really embraced by the industry, getting behind it as well, and partnering up, and that's got to be validating. I mean, to get, not necessarily that it's Chappell Roan, but just to have, major label artists recognizing not just the work you do but the importance and the need for it. It's got to be a great feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible feeling across the board for our team. For those that, have been with Backline since the beginning to newer folks. It's just been incredible to see. I think, like you said, the need has always been there. But we're finally starting to get these stars with these type of massive platforms really speaking out and hopefully being heard by everyone in the industry who has that power to help and really create the change that is necessary and that's been needed for decades now, decades and decades. But it is it has been absolutely just such a highlight, and it is validating, to have folks having this conversation on this kind of level. I mean, you're starting to see society in general start talking about, oh yeah, yeah, she's right. Like, who does take care of musicians? Who helps out these folks who put on the shows that bring so much joy to so many people? And it's been just an incredible time for our organization, and we're just so excited to continue doing this work. And with that, we know there's so many more folks that need our help, and so it's exciting, and it's also like, all right, we have a lot more work to do.
It almost reminds me of the phrase "Who watches the Watchmen."
Mm,
But I distinctly recall approximately a year ago from the time of this taping, I was producing a show in in Michigan, and I remember being in the car on the way, and I just remember thinking like nobody who shows up at 7:30 for doors knows that I'm on the road at 10 a.m. on my way. A day, by the way, which involved getting chased around the block by a crackhead with a tire iron, like before the show, and then getting blamed for being late. So there's a lot going on, in any single event. And
mhm.
I will, just to echo something you mentioned earlier, that you said was echoed back to you, just knowing that Backline is out there. And a big, 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 big shout out to Matt Donovan and Chris Holland and the Heady Wax Fiends crew for, and
Yes.
the entire group for doing such a great job with their fundraising effort for Backline. I mean, guys, I am so proud of you. Folks, check out Chris's interview in season 3, but to the whole Heady Wax Fiends group, like you guys really, really, really did something amazing. And it really, it takes a village to put on live music. And like I like to say, we interview the rest of the villagers, but it takes a larger village to take care of that village. And
Absolutely,
yeah.
and it's folks like Matt. It truly is. Those are the people that really keep Backline going. We are such a grassroots organization in a lot of ways, and so seeing folks come together and donate to Backline and spread the word about Backline and get their communities to learn about us is truly how we've been able to sustain for over 5.5 years. Absolutely.
I want to hear about let's talk about what would you like to see Backline accomplish? Well, actually, let me take that back. Let me break that into two parts. One, in your time with Backline, what would you say is the accomplishment, project, achievement that you're most proud of? Um, Big or little doesn't matter, personal to you. And what are some things that you would like to see either Backline or the industry accomplish going forward?
I'm proud of so many things that we've been able to accomplish within just the time that I've been here for 3.5 years. Again, you could go to the big one, which is the We Got You campaign with Chappell Roan and Charlie XCX. I mean, that no doubt helped put Backline on a different level than we were for sure. And I think we're gonna feel those effects for a while, hopefully for a long time. But I think really breaking into different genres has been my goal personally as community manager. I come from an electronic background, and there's a lot of folks in the electronic scene that are hurting and need help. And I think there's a lot of barriers to mental health in general, but specifically for certain communities and even within the industry, within various genres. And so really aiming and breaking through into the R&B scene, into the hip hop scene, into the electronic scene, and we're seeing that. We're starting to see more folks within those genres and communities coming to us for help. And as community manager, I always want to represent as many folks from as many backgrounds as possible with anything that we do, whether that's interviews or various, content or wellness practitioners that we work with. And so I think that's probably what I'm most proud of, is really just continuing to build our brand and getting the word out there and seeing individuals from all over the nation in so many different genres and so many different backgrounds coming to us has been just so rewarding. And I think, to answer your second question, we have so many dreams at Backline. We know that we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to what we want to do, providing the kind of care we want to provide for. A big goal of mine for the next year really is to grow our venue signage program. We partnered with Live Nation and AEG last year, and we are in every single green room in their venues. So there's, if you're touring and you see a Backline QR code, you can scan it, you can get the help right then and there. That should be everywhere, right?
Hell
Like we
yes.
we want these signs to be in rehearsal spaces, in recording studios, in smaller independent venues. Everywhere that the music industry is, we want to be in. And so that's a personal goal of mine, is to kind of head that project and see our venue signage program grow. We also would love to have more in-person events, whether that's going to music festivals, which we've done in the past, and, set up shop in green rooms and bring wellness kits for touring members and artists and the crew, and just kind of giving them a moment to, like, hey, take care of you, make sure that you're good. Here's a whole wellness kit of items that will promote just that. Um,
Wow.
and to much larger scale projects that we want to accomplish. But when it comes to the industry, I really would love to see more corporations with the funding um, take care of their people. you know
Say
um,
it louder for the people in the back. Absolutely.
it
100%.
is it is so great that Chappell Roan spoke up, and not only spoke up but also donated, and then a lot of our artist friends did that as well. But we would love to see more corporations not only donate, but make long lasting um, investments in their artists' mental health. Um, we get so much joy from music. We get so much joy from live music, especially. We need to be taking care of the people that are putting these shows on. And I think that would be my hope, my own personal hope, for the music industry, is just to really understand that there has been such a need for so long, and it's been to a lot of folks' detriments. It's been avoided it for so many reasons, and it's time now to take care of the people that truly keep this industry alive.
At so many points when you were just saying what you had to say, which I think is just absolutely appropriate. You know, three words, three words continued to come to my mind. We talk about all of the people involved, directly, indirectly, tertiarily, to live music, and all the joy that it brings people, and I can't help, as we talk about the I would say overall lack of corporate awareness and investment, and getting, backlining the idea of something like backlining, like Backline. The three words that kept coming to my mind are "at what cost." You know, uh, as a comedian, I can only look back on the history of the comedians upon whom I was raised. I learned everything, and that those comedians are Jim Belushi and Chris and John Belushi and Chris Farley and George Carlin and Mitch Hedberg and Robin Williams. You know, I remember my grandmother when I was a kid, when I started doing stand up. My grandma chaperoned me to shows, because
Oh,
I
that's
I
so
was
sweet.
I was too young to get in, and one day she said to me, "We're going out for dinner." And it wasn't like, it's only in the way a grandma can say it, where it's like it's not an option. It's like, this is happening. And I had been doing stand up a couple of years, and I decided, let's go to Bandera, because shout out Greg Fundus. He was the drummer in the jazz trio at the time, and I knew him, and I wanted to look. I don't know why I wanted to look cool, like for my grandma, but first I was like, but that's also how I knew I was in trouble, because she told me to pick the restaurant. So I picked Bandera. Greg stops the music, comes say hello, says hi to my grandma. We sit down, and we order our food. My grandma looks at me, says, "I knew Chris Farley."
Wow.
Now, I had a laundry list of things that I was expecting my grandma to maybe say. I knew Chris Farley was not on the bingo card. And I knew she was telling the truth, because my grandma and my late papa were wonderful philanthropists, and we got to go to Second City when I was a kid, for some private shows. So I knew that it was conceivable that she knew people who were on Saturday Night Live, and I first, I'm trying to process the fact that I'm only learning this at 17, and I the first question I have to ask is, how did you know him? They were in a Weight Watchers group together.
Wow.
Can't make it. You literally can't make it up. And the second question, obviously, I mean, as someone who grew up in an SNL house, and who, listen here, if you don't fix yourself, you're gonna go live in a van down by the river. That was all I knew growing. And I asked my grandma, what was he like? And she said, he's the saddest person I'd ever met in my entire life. And you're starting to get really good at stand up, and I wanted to make sure you're up.
Wow.
At the time, yeah. Now, a joke I tell on stage, because we have to be able to laugh at it. But
Yeah.
I remember when she said it at the time, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I don't think I've brought that story up on the show before. But you know, I've often said in talks that I've given, and material that I've written, comedy, you know, find me a happy comedian and I'll find you a bad one.
Mm.
Comedy doesn't come from a place, in my experience anyway. Comedy doesn't come from a place of warmth and fuzziness. It comes from a place of I need an outlet for this pain, and my fingers are too messed up to play a guitar, so I guess I'm gonna have to
Mm.
tell jokes. I became a comedian out of spite. What can I say? And that's what it's been. And dating myself a little bit here as well. But at the time this episode airs, celebrating about 19 years in the industry, um, I wish that when I had had that conversation with my grandma, there was a service like Backline that I could reach out to. And, you know, for all of my friends who are in the industry, for all of the people who are in the industry who I've never met before and don't know you from Adam or Eve, Backline is there. And kind of something you said earlier, I think part of that, just that knowledge gives me a little bit of comfort, and younger me as well. And I think that it's massively important what you all are doing.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's profound, honestly. Um, we're just really grateful to have folks like you continue to shine light on the work that we're doing and wanting to spread to your communities, and share the work that we're doing. I mean, it's honestly how we've been able to sustain for nearing 6 years now, and how we'll be able to sustain, 6 years from now. So, just really grateful for the support.
No, absolutely. And something, just one last little tidbit here. You mentioned something which I thought was extremely important, which was transcending genres. And I think what a lot of people who are outside of the industry don't understand is that, yes, we are all in live music, but we are kind of siloed off by
Yeah.
genre, and not just by profession. And eh, not always, and not necessarily such extremes, but and I really, Chappell, Roan, and Chris Farley is enough name dropping for me. But I can think of, as you were mentioning genres, there are artists that come to mind in the jam scene, and the rock scene, and the psychedelic scene, and the bluegrass scene, and the jamgrass scene that I feel like will hear this interview for what it truly is, and hopefully take y'all up on some of the services you provide, for the sake not just of themselves but for all the people around them. And I think that's really the really one of the most amazing things about Backline is that you're there for everybody, not just the people on stage, but just like us, for they're all the villagers in the village of live music.
Yeah, I mean, it truly does take a village to put on a show, and we get that, and we know
And
that, and we come from that life, and so it's so important to us that, you know, everyone is taken care of. No one's turned away.
absolutely. It takes a village to put on a show, and about the population of Wyoming to put on a festival of Lollapalooza. Uh, Tara, it's been such an absolute pleasure having you on the show, folks. You can find all things Backline in the description and comments of this episode on whatever platform you're listening to or watching this on. And you can also find a link to Backline, backline.care at secondhandtalent.com. We will have that in our partners section as well. Tara, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be a part of Secondhand Talent. And we are just so grateful that we are able to provide a platform for all the great work that Backline is doing.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome, and we're just, again, so grateful for you helping us spread the word.
The rising tide lifts all ships. Well, folks, this has been Steiner with another episode of Secondhand Talent, and we will see you next Wednesday. And that's a podcast. There we go. We did it.
Awesome. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. This was so fun.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? It was my